In the early 19th century, Napoleon warned the world about the Qing Empire. Let China sleep, for when she wakes, she will shake the world. By 1858, Western powers were tired of waiting. Britain, France, and America were losing patience with the slow pace of trade and modernization, demanding new treaties that would force the empire open to global markets. But the British Empire was already fighting a desperate war in India. The 1857 mutiny had pinned down its military, making the prospect of a simultaneous ground invasion in China a logistical nightmare. The West needed a shortcut, a way to secure their commercial interests without committing to an unsustainable, high-stakes war on another front. That solution appeared to arrive with the Taiping Rebellion. At the center of the movement were the Hakka people, converts who had embraced a unique, localized form of Christianity and were now marching across the heart of China. Western missionaries watched the uprising with a sense of wonder. To them, this was the fulfillment of the biblical land of Sinim prophecy, the long-awaited moment when millions of Chinese people would finally convert to the faith. The alignment between Western expansion and Taiping Christianity seemed perfect. However, the two sides were moving toward a collision that neither side quite understood yet. The gap began with the rebels' theology. The Taiping leader Hong Xiuquan claimed to be the literal younger brother of Jesus Christ, sent to establish a heavenly kingdom on earth. Traditionalists like the missionary Mr. Legg were disgusted, viewing these claims as a warped heresy. But idealists like Cecil Whisparish saw it differently. To him, the Taiping were just one step away from true Christianity and only needed the right guidance. Cecil decided to gamble on that potential. He personally funded a mission for Daniel, the heavenly king's cousin, to travel to Nanjing with a single goal: to correct the king's theology and bring the rebellion in line with Western doctrine. It was a gamble built on the hope that Taiping Christianity was a Western import waiting for instructions, rather than a radical, independent revolution. On the ground, the Taiping were aggressive reformers, and their policies struck at the very heart of Chinese society. They banned ancient traditions, including the practice of foot binding. For women like Mei Ling, these reforms were a threat to survival. In the mid-19th century, binding her daughter's feet was seen as the only way to ensure she could marry into a good family and avoid a life of destitution. This internal struggle was invisible to Western diplomats, who dismissed the ruling Qing dynasty as little more than a barbaric and corrupt obstacle to progress. To the West, the Qing's refusal to sign new treaties was proof of their backwardness. They didn't see an empire desperately trying to maintain its sovereignty under the pressure of foreign imperialism. The British were navigating a war they didn't fully understand, projecting their own assumptions onto both the radical rebels and the defensive emperor. By 1860, the conflict reached a critical point. The Taiping army prepared to seize Shanghai, the busiest international trade hub in China. They sent a message to the West. If foreign buildings flew a yellow flag, the Taiping would protect their lives and property. In exchange, they expected the British to remain completely neutral. The yellow flag was a peace offering, but the Taiping's real goal was the harbor itself. Controlling Shanghai would allow them to purchase Western iron steamships, the modern technology they needed to finally defeat the Qing forces. The rebels believed that shared faith would be enough to secure this alliance. They assumed the British would prioritize their brothers in Christ over the interests of the Qing Empire. Lord Elgin, the architect of British diplomacy in China, had no interest in spiritual brotherhood. He looked at the Taiping and saw a threat to the bottom line. The Taiping had a zero-tolerance policy for opium. For Elgin, whose primary goal was the legalization of the opium trade, an alliance with the rebels was a financial impossibility. The British government often spoke of free trade and Christianity, but in the port of Shanghai, the priority was always trade. If their religion got in the way of the massive, lucrative opium revenue flowing through the ports, the religion would be immediately cast aside. For a 19th-century empire, a shared faith was worth nothing if it stood between them and their most lucrative colonial market. Elgin's strategy required a delicate balance, a Chinese government strong enough to keep order, but weak enough to remain subservient. A modernized, steamship-wielding Taiping state would be impossible to control, threatening the entire global order they had built. By siding with the Qing, the West ensured the Taiping's defeat, and kept Napoleon's sleeping giant in a state of manageable decline. They didn't want a Christian brother in the East. They wanted a subservient partner, ensuring that profit would always outmaneuver prophecy.